So Alicent Hightower might be the single most argued about character in this whole show. And the fight online is basically two camps that both think it's obvious. One camp goes, she's the villain, she's the one who put Aegon on the throne, she started the war, she's a hypocrite. And the other camp goes, no, she's a victim, she got married off as a kid, she never wanted any of this. And both camps are completely sure the show is on their side. And I think that's kind of the problem, because I don't think the show is on either side. I think it keeps handing you evidence for both, and then just not resolving it. So, I don't want to just tell you my take up front, because honestly that's the lazy version of this. What I want to do instead is actually go through it, scene by scene. And more than that, I want to just listen to what she actually says, because people quote Alicent constantly, but usually it's a clipped up version that's been edited to make whatever point. So let's use her real lines. Like this one, which is kind of the whole show in one sentence.
Where is duty? Where is sacrifice? It's trampled under your pretty foot again.
Okay, so you have to start at the beginning, because it sets up everything, even though, and I want to be clear about this, it is not the whole case. Because people who love Alicent stop the story right here, and people who hate her skip this part completely, and both of those are cheating. So before Alicent is anybody's queen, she's a teenager. She's the Hand's daughter, Otto Hightower's daughter, and Otto sends her to go comfort the king, Viserys, who's grieving his dead wife, and who's a lot older than her. And he sends her in there over and over, and it's very clear he knows exactly what he's doing. Like, that's the thing. He doesn't ask her how she feels about it. He picks a dress. He aims her at a grieving king like she's a tool, which she basically is in that moment. She's 15. A 15-year-old doesn't have some master plan. Her dad has the plan. She's just the piece he's moving. And you can see her actually doing it, being the comfort, being useful, reading to him, sitting with him. And it works. And that's kind of the tragedy. She's good at it. She's good at being what people need her to be. And the worst part isn't even the marriage. It's what the marriage costs her, which is Rhaenyra. Because before all this, Alicent and Rhaenyra were basically best friends. And the marriage turns her best friend into her stepdaughter, and then into her rival, and then into her enemy, and nobody ever asks either of them if that's what they want. It just happens to them. So for this first stretch, the kid who got married off, I think she's just a victim. Pretty clearly. Full stop, no asterisk. If the show ended at her wedding, she'd be one of the most sympathetic people in it. But here's the trap, and this is the part you have to hold on to, because if you miss it, you'll misread everything after. That real, genuine victimhood at the start, it slowly turns into the thing she uses to justify what she does later. Like, I had no choice starts out as the honest truth about a scared kid. And then, over the seasons, it kind of quietly becomes the excuse of a very powerful woman. So keep an eye on that, because we're going to watch it happen. Now, before we get to the stuff people actually argue about, I want to spend a second on how Alicent thinks, because it's the key to all of it. Because the thing about Alicent is she genuinely believes in the rules. Not as a costume, not as a con. She actually believes that duty and faith and doing what you're supposed to are the only things holding the whole world together. And you can hear how much she resents it too, even while she's defending it. Like she's mad that she followed the rules and Rhaenyra didn't, and Rhaenyra seems fine. So that's the frame for everything she does. She's not a woman who thinks she's above the rules. She's a woman who chained herself to them on purpose, because if the rules are real, then the life they cost her actually meant something. And that's going to explain a lot of stuff that otherwise looks like plain hypocrisy. Okay, so let's jump to the moment a huge chunk of the internet decided she's the villain. The green dress. So there's a wedding, and Alicent shows up late and alone in this green gown. And green is the color the Hightowers light their beacon when they're calling their banners to war. So everybody in that hall who's paying attention gets the message instantly. And yeah, this is the villain reveal, the dress that started a war. And they're right about one thing. This is a choice. Maybe the first fully her own choice we ever see her make. Nobody aimed her at that dress. But I think if you actually look at what she's doing, it's not the starting a war thing people say. She's not declaring war. She's basically announcing in front of everybody that she's finally figured out she's been in one for years. Because the whole time she was keeping her head down, being the dutiful queen, the court was quietly deciding her kids were a problem, and Rhaenyra's side was maneuvering, and her son's claim kept getting shakier. So the dress is the moment she stops pretending the rules are going to protect her or her kids. So is it self-defense, or is it the first domino of a war that kills a ton of people? And I think the honest answer is it's both, at the same time, and you kind of have to hold both. Like if your read on Alicent can't hold two true things at once, it's not really a read on Alicent, it's a read on a cartoon. Now I want to deal with the word that follows her everywhere, because it's like the number one thing people say about her: hypocrite. And the charge is basically, Alicent spends years judging Rhaenyra, for her affairs, for her bastards, for breaking the rules, while she's got her own thing going on with Criston Cole, who's literally a Kingsguard sworn to not do that. And it's not nothing. The show does show you the affair, and it shows you her being careful and quiet and ashamed about it the whole time. So she holds Rhaenyra to a standard she doesn't keep herself, and there's real evidence for it. Listen to her go at Rhaenyra. And on the surface, yeah, that lands. She does hold Rhaenyra to a standard, she breaks herself. I'm not going to pretend she doesn't. But I think the more honest read is actually darker than just hypocrite and kind of sadder, because Alicent doesn't preach the rules because she thinks she's above them. She preaches them because she genuinely believes the rules are the only thing holding the world together, and she hates herself every single time she breaks them. Like, watch her after she slips with Criston. Rhaenyra breaks a rule and feels free. Alicent breaks the same rule and feels damned. So it's not really hypocrisy in the cynical, she's faking it sense. It's more like she's so completely owned by duty that she can't even sin without punishing herself for it. Which is honestly sadder than if she were just a fraud. So, hypocrite? Technically, sometimes, yeah. But I think that's the lazy verdict. The real thing is, she enforced a moral code that was actively destroying her, on everybody, including herself, and called it being good. Okay, now the big one. This is the single most important scene for judging her, and it's the one most takes skip right past, because it's quiet, and it's a misunderstanding. And misunderstandings don't make good angry edit content. So Viserys is dying. He's in a ton of pain, he's out of it on Milk of the Poppy, drifting in and out. And in the dark, he reaches for the person next to him and starts talking. But here's the whole thing. He's not actually talking to Alicent. In his head, he thinks he's talking to Rhaenyra, and he's finally telling his heir this big secret he's kept his entire reign. And the key thing is, Alicent has never been told any of this. Like, she doesn't even know the prophecy exists. So put yourself where she's sitting. Her dying husband grabs her hand in the dark with what she thinks are basically his last clear words, and he says the name Aegon, which is their son's name, and says he should be king. So to her, in that room, her husband just named their son as his heir with his dying breath. And this is the part you have to be honest about, because it's the crux of the whole victim or villain question. Did she lie? And I think the answer is no. The show goes out of its way to make it a real, genuine misunderstanding. She's not making up a claim, she actually believes one. That's different. And here's the harder question, did she want to believe it? And I mean, come on. Of course she did. She's a terrified mom, and she just got handed the one outcome that saves her kids from a queen who's very likely to see them as threats. So, of course she grabbed it. It's not a lie. It's something more human, and honestly more dangerous than a lie. It's a misunderstanding she had every reason in the world not to question. So she didn't. And that's the thing that lights the fuse on the entire war. So, is that villain behavior? I don't really think so. That's a scared mom getting handed a miracle and not looking too closely at it. Which is very human. It's also catastrophic. Both things. Okay, but now let me do the flip side. Because if we're being fair, we can't just stack the sympathetic stuff. So let me show you the Alicent her defenders never bring up. Driftmark. So there's a fight between the kids, and Alicent's son Aemond loses an eye. And Alicent, in front of the entire court, wants payment, like an actual eye. And she grabs a blade and goes at her own stepdaughter's kid over it. And this is the scene that kind of kills the she's just a passive victim reading for me.
Alicent, stay with the king!
Because nobody forced that blade into her hand. This is her. Pushed far enough, the dutiful, rule-following queen goes for revenge against a child. And I think that's the show flat out telling you. The same fear that makes her sympathetic is also the exact thing that makes her capable of being cruel. It's not one or the other. It's the same thing pointing in two directions. And here's the brutal part. The war she keeps feeding comes back around and takes her side too. It's not like her ruthlessness protects her kids. It doesn't. The escalation she keeps adding to just grinds everybody up, her own family included. It never actually spares her. Keep that in mind for the ending. Okay, here's another piece that makes the whole thing sadder. Alicent burns her entire life defending her kid's claim to the throne, Aegon's specifically. And the brutal joke is, Aegon doesn't even want it. He's a mess, he's cruel, he treats her like garbage, and he mostly wishes she'd leave him alone. So you've got this woman who lit a war to put her son on a throne, and the son basically resents her for it. And Aegon knows exactly where to hit her with it. He throws the whole thing back in her face, that she never really wanted him, she wanted an heir. And the thing is, on some level she kind of agrees with him, which is the worst part, because she didn't put him on the throne out of some big love for Aegon the person. She did it because the rules said the son comes before the daughter, and she believed the rules. So she spent everything she had on a claim, not really on a kid. And by season 2, you can actually see her starting to doubt whether Aegon should be anywhere near a crown, which is a wild place to end up when making him king is the exact thing you burned your whole life for. And then there's Otto, her dad. Remember, is the guy who aimed her at the king in the first place, and who keeps using her as his instrument for basically the entire show. Every big move Alicent makes early on, Otto's hand is somewhere on it. But here's the one genuinely defiant thing she does toward her own side. She gets rid of Otto, she takes the hand's pin off him, basically fires her own father, because she's finally sick of being his tool. And I actually think that's one of the most important moments for the whole victim or villain question, because it's Alicent going, for once, I am not going to be the piece you move. It's her reaching for agency, and it goes badly. She's not good at wielding power on her own, because she was never allowed to learn how, so things kind of fall apart around her after. But it's her trying, it's the cage rattling, and it doesn't hold. Okay, so let's get to the part of Alicent that almost never makes it into edits, because it doesn't hype well, which is just the exhaustion. By around season 2, she's done literally everything the rules asked of her. She married the guy she didn't pick, she had his kids, she defended their claim, she buried her own conscience over and over. And it got her basically nothing. No power, no peace, not even the love of the kids she did all of it for. And that's the question of somebody who's just realized she spent her entire life as a piece on other people's boards. Her dad's, her husband's, her faith's. And the bill finally came, and there's nothing to show for it. And I think that's the tragedy the show is actually about with her. It's not evil queen. It's a woman who obeyed every single authority over her and got completely hollowed out by all of them. So, big point toward victim here, but it's a specific kind of victim. She's not a victim of one villain. She's a victim of the whole system she also happens to be enforcing on everybody else, which is a weird spot to be in, and it's basically the whole point of the character. So then, end of season 2, she does something she almost never does in the entire show. She makes a choice for herself, not for her dad, not for her sons, not for duty, for her. She goes to Rhaenyra, in secret, and she basically offers to open the gates, to hand over her own son, Aegon, to end the war. And then she does the thing that's honestly kind of staggering. She admits, out loud, to Rhaenyra, that the whole thing might have started with her getting it wrong. Like, sit with that. She's confessing that the war might be built on her misunderstanding. And there's this bitter thing underneath the whole scene, which is the first genuinely free choice she makes in the entire story is to surrender. That's it. That's what freedom looks like for her. And you can read that as her redemption, like she's finally doing the right thing. Or you can read it as one last betrayal of her own son this time. And I think the show very much lets you read it both ways on purpose. It's not going to pick for you. Okay, so this is where season 3 matters, because season 3 is basically the bill coming due for all of it. This is where you find out what all that duty and all those choices actually bought her. And the short version is nothing good, because by season 3, that choice from the finale plays all the way out. She helps hand King's Landing to Rhaenyra. She works it from the inside, gets Helaena to stand the city watch down, opens the door, all of it. And there's this quiet, devastating scene where she finally tells Helaena the truth about the misunderstanding, about Viserys' dying words, that the whole war basically spun out of her mishearing a dying man. And I think that scene is huge for this whole question, because it's her, out loud, owning it. She's not spinning it. She's basically saying, this thing that killed thousands of people started with me getting something wrong. That's not a villain's move. Villains don't do that. That's somebody carrying the weight of it honestly, which if anything makes you feel worse for her. And then there's the decoy. When they bring her the fake Daron, the kid they've dressed up to pass off as her son, she takes one look and knows it's not him. And honestly, that's a gut punch, because think about what it's saying. She barely knows her own son. He got sent away as a kid. She's seen him a handful of times. And even so, she looks at the fake and knows in a second it's not him. So the show's giving you this thing where she's a mom who was robbed of her own kid, and a mom who still knows him in her bones. Both at once. Again, that's very much this show. And by the end of all this, where does it leave her? She's basically Rhaenyra's prisoner. And here's the detail I think is important. She's not in a dungeon. She's kept in nice rooms, comfortable in the Red Keep, which is almost worse, right? Because it's the same thing her whole life has been. A comfortable cage that other people decide the shape of. Like, she started as a girl her father placed where he needed her, and she ends as a woman Rhaenyra keeps where she needs her. Full circle, and not in a good way. Okay, and I can't do an Alicent breakdown and just skip the moment everybody's going to be arguing about, which is the thing with Aemond. Because at some point this season, there's a scene between Alicent and her son Aemond that goes somewhere really uncomfortable, and it turns into a kiss between a mother and her son. And yeah, we're going to actually talk about it because I don't think it's just there for shock value. I think it's doing something. So first, this is the show pushing the Greens all the way to their ugliest logical endpoint. This is a family that got so warped by isolation and duty and power that even its closest, most protective bond finally curdles into something wrong. And remember, of all her kids, Aemond is the one Alicent was actually there for. She's the mom who held him after Driftmark, after he lost the eye, when basically nobody else in that family did. So Aemond's loyalty to her has always been the intense, almost frightening kind. And the show taking that specific bond and shoving it over this line is not random. It's the point. The Green family's love has always been tangled up with control and damage. Otto with Alicent, Alicent with Aegon, all of it. And this is just that idea taken to the darkest place it can go. Now, for our actual question, victim or villain, this scene is basically a Rorschach test. And I think that's on purpose. Because however you read who leans into it, it lands as both at once. If you read it as Aemond's move, him crossing the last line, then it's one more violation of a woman whose body has never really been her own. Her father aimed it at a king, then her husband had it, and now even her son treats her as something to possess. That's the victim reading, and it's brutal. But if you read any of it as Alicent, as her being so isolated, so hollowed out, so starved for anyone who ever actually chose her, that she doesn't stop it, then it's the darkest possible version of that she's not just a passive victim thread we've been pulling on this whole time. And the show, being the show, refuses to tell you which one it is. It just lets it sit there. And here's the part that ties it back to everything. Alicent sacrificed her entire self for this family. For the claim, for the sons, for duty. And the payoff, in Season 3, is that the family she gave everything to is the thing that finally desecrates her. That's not a shock twist. That's her whole tragedy made physical. The cage didn't just trap her. It came for the last part of her that was still hers. And before I land this, I want to point at the one thread that's underneath everything, because it's the real tragedy and it's easy to miss if you're busy arguing villain or victim. It's not really Alicent versus a queen. It's Alicent and Rhaenyra. Two girls who genuinely loved each other before the men in their lives turned them into rival banners. And every cruel thing between them lands harder because of how much they used to mean to each other. The war didn't make them enemies. The war was what two friends did to each other after the world told them they had to. And Alicent is one half of that, which is the part that makes her impossible to just file under villain and walk away. And you can see it flicker back, even late. Even after everything, when the two of them end up in a room together, there's this thing where the war kind of drops away for a second, and they're just two people who knew each other before any of this. The show keeps putting them in these quiet little two-hander scenes on purpose, because it wants you to feel the size of what got wrecked. It's not really two factions. It's a friendship that the whole realm decided had to turn into a war. And basically, every dead body in the dance is downstream of two teenage girls who got pushed onto opposite sides of a board by their fathers. Alicent didn't choose that board, but she absolutely learned to play on it, and she got good at it, and that's the part she doesn't get to walk away from. Okay, so, evil or victim? After all of that, where do I actually come down? And I'll be honest, I don't think it's a cop-out to say it's both. I think both is just correct. But the order matters, so let me be specific, because she's both, on its own, is kind of a non-answer. Here's how I'd put it. Alicent was made a victim before she was old enough to agree to any of it. That part's not really up for debate. But then she grew into a woman who did genuinely bad things. The eye for an eye, enforcing a code that wrecked people, putting Aegon on the throne, and lighting the whole war. And here's the key part. She didn't do those things in spite of being a victim. She did them through it. Like, every cruel thing she does in the name of duty and faith. And her kids, which are the exact things that were used to cage her in the first place. She took the cage and she handed it to everybody around her. So I don't think she's the villain of the dance. I think she's more like the most obedient victim of it, and the obedience is exactly what made her dangerous. She's what happens when you take somebody powerless, and you teach them the rules are sacred, and then you give them just enough power to enforce those rules on other people. That's not a hero, and it's not a villain. That's a tragedy. It's a person who got used and then became a way to use others. And I think that's why the show won't let either camp win. Because if you say she's just a victim, you're erasing the real harm she did. And if you say she's just a villain, you're pretending she ever had a fair shot, which she super didn't. The truth is the uncomfortable middle, where she's a person who was wronged and who did wrong, and neither one cancels the other out. And honestly, I think the reason she lands so hard, the reason people can't stop arguing about her, is that she's basically what most of us would actually be. Like, we all want to think we'd be Rhaenyra, the one who breaks the unfair rules and flies off on the dragon. But if you got handed Alicent's exact life, be honest, you'd probably do what Alicent did. You'd follow the rules because you were scared, and because everyone around you swore the rules were the good and holy thing, and you'd tell yourself the whole time that you didn't have a choice. And then one day you'd look up and realize you'd become the thing enforcing the cage on everybody younger and more trapped than you. That's not a monster. That's just a person who never got to be anything else. And that's way more uncomfortable than a villain, because you can't really feel superior to it. So that's where I land. Not villain, not victim. Something quieter and honestly sadder than both. A woman who gave her entire life to the rules, and the rules ate her, and on the way down she took a lot of people with her. But that's just where I land, and I genuinely think this one's arguable more than almost anybody in the show. So you tell me where you come down, victim, villain, or that thing in the middle the show keeps refusing to name. I actually want to know, so let me know in the comments. And if you want me to do Rhaenyra next, the exact same way, actually go through it, decision by decision, no team picking. Say so, and I'll do her. Thanks for watching.